Continuing to show love and let that be the foundation for which you lead these relationships. God gives us so much grace and so much mercy and so much forgiveness, but it is so hard for us to give that to other people. Yet he gives it to us every single day.
Love in the choosing sense is maybe how you choose to speak to them first, or maybe how you choose to include them. You know, I think about those opportunities that you have with your kids, and it's like the sporting event or whatever that may be, and maybe that's that picture that you text to the grandma and say, hey, I just didn't want you to miss this.
Your blended family has a 100% chance of success when you do it God's way.
We are Blended Kingdom Families, and we want to provide biblical resources to heal and restore families with a message of hope for the next generation.
Let's get after it.
Hey guys, welcome back to the BKF podcast. We are super pumped to be with you today. You are looking absolutely lovely.
Thanks. So
and thank you. Well, I have a new shaved head today, so get a new cut on it. Extra smooth.
Okay.
Guys, we're excited you're here. If you haven't already, take an opportunity, like, share, comment, leave us a review. You can also send us your questions.
Oh, yes.
We are doing some podcasts later on just on Q&A, so we'd love to hear from you. Today, we're going to talk, we're going to do a couple of podcasts, a couple series on extended family relationships.
Yes.
So you say that, let's define it first. What does that mean? What would that include?
Yeah, so extended family relationships can be in-laws, it can be grandparents, it can be aunts and uncles, cousins, nieces. So anyone really outside of the core family unit, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the reason we're going to talk about this as it specifically relates to blended families is so many times people kind of associate the divorce just with the biological parents.
Yeah.
And really, and we've seen this even in our own blended family, the divorce really affects all the extended family.
Oh, yes.
Because they're very close with the kids, and they're very close maybe even with you as a daughter-in-law or son-in-law.
Yeah.
And so when that fracture happens, a lot of times these folks just get left behind.
Sure.
And kind of get left to decide and left to choose and left to kind of wonder where their relationship stands.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is, one, encourage you. We're going to talk about ways that we can encourage you in that. And we're going to talk about how important that is to maintain those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the first things that we want to talk about is the importance of family and the significance of extended family relationships. And depending on the dynamic of your family or how close you are to, let's say, the grandparents or aunts and uncles can really play a significant role in the development of your children. And so our family, we have a very close-knit family. And so, right after we got married, my mom was involved a lot. I was in nursing school.
Thank you, Mimi.
Thank you, Mimi.
Loving us.
Yes. And even your mom, Scott, would come up and visit pretty regularly. And so our kids have grown up knowing, grandmother, have grown up knowing Papa and Mimi. And that has been super beneficial. I've seen that, especially in Michael, our oldest, growing up in a blended family, coming from a single parent home. And then now in our blended family, how much that has benefited him. And,
yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. And we also want to recognize that, in different cultures value family in different ways too.
Oh, sure.
So we know like certain, I think like Hispanic and different minority groups, they really value the family unit. And we understand how important that is. But we also know that in blended families, there can be this tendency, especially as you become remarried, to put this hyper focus on your new marriage and just kind of forget that. And you mentioned it, the importance of family.
Yeah.
Whether that is, hey, we need, in our case, we needed Mimi to come and help us so we can have a date night.
Yeah.
We needed her to pour into our kids. We needed those situations to just kind of foster growth and love. And I know we're going to probably touch on this in a minute, but now we even see it even more as Michael's going to college, and now he's going to be living in the same city with his Mimi.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge.
No, I think it's going to be great. And, and it's also tested us as well. I know, we also have a relationship with Michael's other set of grandparents.
Yes.
So his dad's dad and dad's mom. And so, being in a blended family, we've had to learn how to navigate those relationships, especially during the holidays, and making sure that he gets that connected time with them, that he gets to see them, even in the summertime, that he's getting that continual exposure to them so that they can speak life into him and have and foster a relationship together. And we want that. We've always had a good relationship with, the other families, extended family, especially Michael's aunt. He really has a great relationship with her. And I know that she's been kind of like this really neutral party for him that's been really great over the years.
Well, and I think the reason that we have maintained those relationships is because we understand the importance of what we want to focus on.
Yeah.
So many times where I think the mistake happens is you look at these extended family relationships and you say, well, this is an opportunity to get them on my side, or this is an opportunity for me to, voice my opinions on maybe their other parent. And that's really just not the case. What we want to focus on is maintaining good relationships.
Yeah.
And more of that is what you don't say than what you do say.
Yeah.
It's not an opportunity for you just to bash or to pull, them to your side. It's saying, hey, listen, we value this relationship because of the value that you bring to our family as our extended family.
Absolutely.
And the value you bring to the kids in your role as grandma or grandpa or aunt or uncle. And that's just so important to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think, if we were to, label a couple of things of the importance of extended family, I would say, just like you said, they bring value to the relationship. It also gives opportunity for them to create and build upon their bond and their relationship and maintain that. Just because the parents divorce doesn't mean that the grandparents and the kids have to divorce, so to speak. And so maintaining that relationship, it can be so vital. I know there's so many people that we have spoken with and experienced that their grandparents raised them, or their grandparents were these super influential people in their life, or aunt and uncle. So the importance of maintaining those relationships for the benefit of your children and stepchildren, you guys, is huge. And we understand that not all extended family is healthy. It's just like co-parenting relationships.
Yeah.
And so, there are boundaries, and that is another episode that we're going to get into in this series. But the importance of family is so significant for these kiddos. And so the more that we can do to foster that and provide those opportunities, even if it's on your watch. I know there were a lot of times where Michael, we had to give up our time so that Michael could see his extended family on his dad's side.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was just proximity. They lived closer to us at the time, or whatever that was. And we didn't mind doing that at all. We wanted that for Michael because he wanted that.
Well, what you're doing is you're investing into the future.
Yes.
A lot of those relationships, especially with young kids, it's really about time and fun. But as the kids grow up, they're going to find the value of understanding that their family is larger than just their mom and dad, and that they have those relationships to fall on, and they have those relationships to rely on. So what you're doing in those moments of showing how important extended family relationships are is you're investing in the child's future. You're investing into what that looks like when they're in college, what that looks like as adults for them, so that they're not missing out and they're not wondering why they don't have a closer relationship. And again, I think we see this in blended families so much because we want to protect, like you said, our time, their time.
Yeah.
And anything that doesn't kind of support that, you're kind of like, no, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And what that does is it hurts. It hurts the extended family.
Yeah.
I can imagine being a grandma or a grandpa, or I mean, I know that's kind of old school, like grandpa, that terminology. They got new terminology like mimis and papas and honeys and sweeties. Yeah. But I can imagine it hurts their feelings when they don't get to see their grandkids.
Yeah.
And so what will that do in the long term? So if you're listening to this and you're like, maybe my extended family relationships are not that great right now, but I hear you and I see the importance. We're going to bridge into the second part of this, which is the love and forgiveness side.
Yes.
And I feel like this is going to be the biggest point. And I want to preface this by saying, whatever happened during your divorce, understand, and I think we can all at least accept the fact that maybe in that divorce, those extended families tend to gravitate to their biological side.
Yeah.
And so there may have been hurt feelings. There may have been situations where things were said that were not kind. So we respect that. We respect that about your story.
Yeah.
But we also want to give you some tools to move past it.
Yeah. Well, and when it comes to love and forgiveness for your extended family, we want to show grace and compassion towards them, and be able to relate to them in that. And so I want to read some scripture here, and I love this one. It's from Colossians 3:12 through 14. And it says, "Put on then as God's chosen one, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another. And if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you. So you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." And what I love about this is that I think the foundation is love. So whenever we can continue to show that extended family love, regardless of what happened in the divorce, and if it's your ex-spouse's parents, that you're dealing with, grandparents or your own, continuing to show love and let that be the foundation for which you lead these relationships. And through that, that's where forgiveness, it becomes easy. That's where forgiveness is offered so freely, because forgiveness is the one thing that God gives us so much grace and so much mercy and so much forgiveness, but it is so hard for us to give that to other people. Yet he gives it to us every single day.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things that we do as people is this concept of, we look at love and forgiveness and we say, well, that's for other people, or that's to be given to me. But when we're faced with that opportunity and we say, I don't know how to love this person because of what they've done. I can't forgive this person because of the way they've made me feel. Again, I just look at this, and I'm just kind of throwing out a symbolism here, but it's just kind of a hardening of hearts. I mean, we look at it and we say, you know what, there's just so much callous around my heart for this person that the concept of love or forgiveness just doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
So what I want to encourage you is, love in the choosing sense is maybe how you choose to speak to them first, or maybe how you choose to include them. I think about those opportunities that you have with your kids, and it's like the sporting event or whatever that may be, and maybe that's that picture that you text to the grandma and say, "Hey, I just didn't want you to miss this." Yeah, that's showing love. It's starting a process by which you can have a deeper conversation about forgiveness. Yeah, and again, we look at this concept of forgiveness, and remember, this is a gift that you give. Yeah. It's given by you. It's not earned. There's not a specific timing for it. It is a choice that you make that's saying, I'm going to choose to give you forgiveness, and I'm going to choose to move forward in our relationship in love and kindness and acceptance and togetherness. That's how you start that process. Yeah. So what else can people do when love and forgiveness? What other steps would you encourage them to take, Vanessa?
Yeah, I think it just begins with self. And I think a lot of this, if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, I always talk about the condition of your heart, getting into the Lord's presence. I think it begins with that personal relationship, and it begins with you. And so, examining your heart, and what is your heart towards them? Is it calloused towards them? Is it... has there been some hurt that you need to process through? Is there some forgiveness of yourself first? And so I think starting there is a great first step. We're big proponents of biblical counseling. And so, if there are, extenuous circumstances that happened, or, abuse was involved, trauma was involved, addiction was involved, things like that. You guys, we have to work that out. We have to process through that and get through our junk in order to get into a place where we can, extend that love and forgiveness from a pure heart, and not from something we are doing out of our flesh, or doing out of anything other than the love of Christ. Yeah. And so, I think that also goes hand in hand with supporting each other. And I know we were going to save this one for another day, but I want to bring this up as well, because I think that with love and forgiveness, supporting one another and supporting those extended family members is so important because, like you said, they may not be able to go to all of the school functions or the games and things like that. So how can we go about supporting our extended family, and for those who want to be more involved but have now been pushed out because of the divorce and the parents or the blended family, so to speak, kind of shutting them out?
So I'm going to throw a really good practical thing that you can do here. And it's surprising me. Most people, when I'm going to say this, you're going to be like, whoa. Most people who listen to our podcast, I would say the majority of them are believers. They attend church. They do these things. I'm going to encourage you, if you have a disconnected relationship with whoever is in that extended family, you define them. Invite them to church. Invite them to your church. Invite them in for a weekend and say, hey, can we have dinner and go to church?
Yeah.
The supporting each other, and we talked about, there's some specifics like emotional, maybe that's financial, spiritual, but supporting is including. And include them in ways that maybe they haven't been invited before.
Yeah.
Remember, extended family members looking at that divorce are saying, I don't want to step too far because I don't want to damage the relationship with my biological child who is on the. So I'm trying to hold, and we're going to talk about boundaries next week, but I'm trying to hold this. So I'm waiting for an invitation.
Yeah.
Their, response to any question is going to be, well, they invited me.
Yeah.
They invited me. They invited me to church. They invited me to, Tommy's baseball game. They invited me to the football game, and I wanted to go.
Yeah.
And so this was an opportunity to include. And it's an opportunity to start building bridges.
No, I think that's good. And I think what I hear you saying too, through all of that, it's just having open, honest, good communication. We talk a lot about co-parents working together, especially when it comes to the kids' school schedule, the yearly schedule, vacations, things like that. These are things that we can also include the extended family with, and be able to support them in that. Like, hey, invite them on the family vacation. Or, the other day our boys had they were doing, what was it for the school? They were trying to raise money for an event at school. And so one of our sons, he's a future entrepreneur, and he reached out to all of our extended family and was asking for money. He had no shame in his game, his fundraising game.
They won too, by the way.
And he was the second highest, he was the kid that brought in the second highest amount for the fundraiser. So I was proud of him. Yeah. But even little things like that, you guys, just sending those things to the extended family saying, hey, would you want to be a part of this, and so into what the kids are doing? But I think it all begins with great communication and letting them know what's going on. And again, like you said, Scott, inviting them into those things, but also making a place for them where they feel welcome to come in. Because like you said, I think a lot of them are like, where are my boundaries? And some of them may feel like they can't step into that. And then you have the ones that overstep. And like you said, we'll talk about that next week. But for the ones that, they're just like, I don't know where my place is at. You can start by giving them a place to go and inviting them to be a part of it. Yeah.
I want to end with one thing here just that occurred to me. When we were talking about forgiveness, and we really kind of push that to say, hey, I'm going to forgive that person. I also want to acknowledge the fact that if you're hearing this and you're feeling shame because of some of the things you've done and some of the ways that you've pushed people out, and some of the things that the nastiness that happened during that divorce and the things that you said or did, I just want you to know that, number one, shame comes from the enemy. It is not something that you have to carry around, and that you can make a choice in the same way you can choose to forgive.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things you can do is ask for forgiveness and see how walls fall down and see how much bonding and love can take place. So I just didn't want to leave that out here. If you happen to be listening and you're like, I'm doing well, but I'm really shameful for some of the things that I did. And so I just want to give you that freedom to say, hey, this is a great time to send that text message saying, hey, I'm really sorry. I really hope that you can forgive me for that. Don't miss that opportunity.
I think that's great. And it reminds me of scripture in 1 John 1:9 when it says, if we confess our sins and ask for forgiveness, he is faithful and just to forgive us of all our sins and to cleanse us from our unrighteousness. And so I think starting with self first, and then, like you said, extending that out to those that maybe we've hurt or who have hurt us, and offering that forgiveness or receiving that, extending it.
Well, I love this topic, and I know it affects people, and I know that our audience wants better relationships. So I'm glad that you've been here today. We're going to go next week, and we're going to talk about boundaries. We're going to talk about legacy, which is one of our favorite topics.
Yeah.
But before we leave you, we are not necessarily, I don't think, the experts on extended family.
Right.
But the good thing is we know some.
We know some.
So we have some really great friends, Dave and Ashley Willis, who host the Naked Marriage podcast. They have just released a new book called Married into the Family. It's on Amazon right now. It is literally one of the best books we've read on extended family relationships.
Yes.
So if you haven't received a copy or gotten a copy,
Yep.
go to Amazon. Married into the Family by Dave and Ashley Willis.
Yes.
You'll love it.
Yeah, it's packed with biblical insight, but how to navigate extended family relationships, and whether you're blended or not.
Yeah.
This is a book that everybody can read on relationships and having to deal with in-laws and in that extended family. So it's great, you guys.
There needs to be a whole book on that.
Yes.
We've got a hilarious in-law story. I don't know if we'll tell it, but we've got a pretty funny story about my mother.
I think we can tell it now that she is with Jesus.
Yeah.
But if she were Earthside, she would be very.
Do you want to tell it now? Just to end the
embarrassed.
podcast on this light note of the story?
I think we should save it.
Save it?
Yeah, we'll save it.
Okay, we'll talk about the end of next week's podcast. We're going to talk about legacy
Because
and
this
heritage.
is boundaries, and this is one that she crossed.
Boundaries. Yeah, that was a funny one. Yeah.
Mother-in-law crossed the boundary, so we'll save it for next week.
I thought it was hilarious. But next week, we're going to tell that story. You won't want to miss it. Guys, thanks for joining us today on the BKF podcast. We're so excited you're here. We love that you are here. Don't forget, leave us a review, like, share, comment, share this episode with anybody you think would benefit from it. Guys, we can't wait to see you next week.
Be blessed in all that you do.
Hey guys, so glad you were here with us today, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
And you can find more resources from Blended Kingdom Families at blendedkingdomfamilies.com. Join us again next time as we hang out with more amazing podcast guests. And remember, nothing will be impossible with God.